business out of college and labeled myself as an SOB, son of a builder. So that's all I've done all my life. So I just keep at it. I discovered the consulting side of the home building business in 2003, which is just a whole different business model. You know, it's the option. People going to build a new home, they either go to a traditional builder and pay his margin, or they come to a company like mine and they pay a consulting fee, which is dramatically less than a builder margin, especially these days. But that's a little upfront stuff, but I always like to start with this quote because it really reminds me how I learned the business. I got into the business and my dad basically mentored and consulted me through the first 3 or 4 houses that I ever built. You know, he plopped a blueprint on my desk and said, "You're never going to learn the business sitting here writing checks." I did learn a good part of the business doing that. He said, "You're never going to learn it by sitting here. So here's a plan. There's a lot. Go build a house." Okay? So he kind of took me to the end of the pier and dumped me off. But he was in the office next door. So, and that was back in the days cell phones didn't exist. Hardly any of the communication tools existed that we have right now. So all he gave me was a schedule. He said, "Hey, if you got any questions about that schedule, just ask me." And he had a bank of subcontractors I could pull on. But anyway, that goes back to this quote, which I think is very appropriate for folks that are looking to take on a project like this. You know, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember. So that's where we are right now. Involve me and I learn. So that's what happened when my dad came in and slapped that plan down on the desk. He involved me. And good morning. So I always like to show this. And then it goes to me. This is the mechanicals class today. That's me. I am a master builder, which is a designation you get through the National Association of Home Builders. And it's like designations like they have in the real estate world. So there is no licensing of builders in Texas. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but anybody can hang up a shingle and say, "Look, I'm a builder." That has pluses and minuses. But I do stay involved. I'm a member of the Greater Houston Builders Association. So I can keep up on the current stuff that's coming on the market because new products are coming in every day. And keep up with what's happening in the industry with all the swirl of stuff like supply chain stuff and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I do stay very involved. And that's the team. Now, my wife's not here to hand out. Mechanicals are really 3 stages. You said it, MEP. Perfect. That's kind of the designated call letters. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Okay? A lot of times I hesitate to say MEP because that implies a particular sequence. Sometimes. And I like to make it very clear that it should be MPE. But that doesn't flow out of the tongue so well. But each section I like to open it up with a slide and then kind of have these bullet points. It is a 2-stage process. You'll see on the handout there. Involves the rough in and the trim out. Really plan the space. I really need to stress that these days because people love this modern design with either a very low slope or a flat roof. And surprise, there's no place to put the mechanical when you do something like that. So I have to tell a story of a client I was working with 5-6 years ago. It was over in a neighborhood just south of River Oaks. So it was a big house, very modern looking. And I walked the house with the HVAC contractor, who's probably the best in the business in Houston. That's my humble opinion. The guy's just sharp as can be. We walked through the house, we couldn't figure out how to run anything anywhere. And the owner was kind of griping at me. I said, well, I'm going to invite the designer out here and and see what kind of great ideas he has. He drew this portion of the house. Let him come out and tell us. So we had him come out, we did a 4-hour walk through the house. He had zero input about what to do.
So you didn't identify single chase or anything like that?
He didn't provide chases. He didn't account for the fact that he designed one side of the house, put a narrow walkway across the second floor to the other side of the house. Okay, great. And you know, when you go on the first floor, you could move back and forth, but you had to go over this walkway to get to the other side with no attic above it. We literally had to build a chase on top of the roof, luckily behind some other stuff, just to run a duct from the main part of the house over to this little offshoot that he drew. So that's just a long story to tell you, as you're having your plan designed, or if you already have it designed, which you do, you know, look at it carefully. See if you can sidestep some of those issues. Is your house pretty much a traditional high pitch roof?
No.
No, okay. So that's the advice I would give to you is get with an AC guy and talk to him. See if there is an issue. There may not be. So the air can flow through there. You can see these vents right. Oh, wait a minute. Let me use my super professional pointer here. These things here are probably vents coming off bath fans and things like that. Anyway, as you can see, maybe they're going to foam this house because they obviously didn't use radiant barrier. Okay. Well, that's me just I was actually doing a site visit at that time, but this is another thing that the HVAC person will do, and that's the V part of the HVAC, okay? HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and AC. So whenever you got a hood vent in the house, the AC guy will ask you what the size of the hood vent is and what are the specifications, and he puts in that rough-in pipe based on that. Show you, this is the spray foam. You can see that spray foam up there and how the ducts will run. And then a big duct right here. And this is a real interesting shot. This is a return air duct, and I can tell that by just the way it's installed. And you see this duct right here. It's called a jumper duct. So it's real important to get airflow in these houses, and especially the foam houses, because the air doesn't just flow by itself because it's sealed. So they have a jumper duct. They have this thing pulling air in, and it's also pulling air in from this room. So that's just, the AC guy will figure all that stuff out.
And they shut the foam after MEP everything was done?
Yeah, yeah. Again, that's the HVAC guy. You can see, here's one of those white vent pipes right there. I'm gonna guess a tankless heater is gonna go somewhere in this area and connect to that vent pipe. Because those things should go in when the plumber comes in and does his rough in, which is the next section. There's some foreshadowing there for you. Let's see what else I can see. This kind of denotes maybe a closed combustion also. And there's the long forgotten outside unit. So, yeah, that's the second part. When they come in and do the trim out, they put the AC registers on all the supply outlets on the ceiling. They put the registers on the return airs, and then they set the outside unit. So when they do the rough in, they're going to run this pipe from the attic unit to the outside. And one of the issues that was prominent a year or so ago, the copper in these things was like gold. And the AC guy would come in and he would rough in the house and he'd put 2 of these things in. You go in the house the next morning, I thought he did this work. Yeah, it's really, anyway. I've suggested they get a 220 and hook it up to this thing. So you can find a little pile of ashes. Now plumbing is 3 stages of work. The ground plumbing, which is the drain plumbing in the slab. The top out, which is running all the water lines, gas lines, venting that they have to do. They'll typically, if you remember, well, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I've got some pictures of the slab plumbing that goes in, the white pipes that are sticking up. Well, the plumber runs those up and out through the roof, whatever needs to be up and out through the roof. Oh, you got some of the notes things there, so you can stash those. And then the trim out, that's at the very end where they're setting all the sinks, all the faucets, toilets, putting drains in, finishing the house out. Probably putting the tankless water. It's the drain piping that goes in the slab. These risers, you know, the plumber will look at the plans and figure out where these fixtures are setting. And I think I put on those notes there, if you can get the designer to draw what they call a plumbing layout, that's extremely helpful. I mean, the designer can get very accurate dimensions that tell the plumber exactly where to run these drain lines stuck out in the middle of nowhere. Which, to the plumber, they're not in the middle of nowhere. To an individual looking at that, they go, what the hell are they doing? But the key question, here's the trivia question, why is this pipe so much taller than the others? You can't answer this. Well, it is a vent pipe. Okay, I'll supply the answer. It's in another class you'll have to come to. No. They fill these pipes with water. This is a water test, and so the water comes all the way up to here, and just the pressure provided by the gravity of water that's there is going to test all the connections. Okay, because these connections aren't terribly critical. Of course, they are critical, but not terribly critical relative to how well everything functions, because there isn't a lot of pressure on those joints. Whereas in the supply lines, there's pressure on those lines all the time. So those connections need to be done very precisely. These, of course, they glue them. They do a good job of doing that, but you got to water test it anyway. Another reason this is a good thing to do is when the foundation guy comes in and starts digging all his beams and things like that, if he does happen to nick a PVC line, the water will come out and everybody will know.
Also, there's water standing inside of there.
Yeah, through this whole pipe system right here. Not in the trenches, but in the pipe system, and they filled it up from here. Does that make sense? Be with every shower, every tub shower, and something I just learned recently, every freestanding tub. Okay, you know how people like to put these clawfoot tubs in. Well, you wouldn't even do it in a clawfoot tub, because then you'd have a big open dirt bag underneath it. But a freestanding tub is called a pedestal tub. The sides of it come down and sit on the floor. Do you have one of those in your house? Yeah. Yeah. And to get the drain needs a little bit of wiggle room. So the tub box allows for that wiggle room. But this is the termination of this particular system. And I start looking at stuff like this. I wonder what the heck this drilling machine is right here. They may be doing a geothermal thing, but this is where it's going to come out. It stops. That's the end of the plumber's work until he comes back at the trim out to tie this either into city sewer line or a septic. So by then the septic would have been dug and installed somewhere out here and just connected to. Another shot of how these lines are run. Again, if you take a picture of it, you know how this one ties into this. There's a tub box, and this would be the vent for this particular tub or shower. These 3-inch lines, 9 times out of 10, are commodes. But again, it gets a little difficult when you come out and try to measure to see that these risers are in the right place. You know, people would look at this and go, oh, this is a commode. Well, yes, and sometimes it's a 3-inch pipe to go to the upstairs. And you can't really, it relates to nothing. Some supports, sometimes, they wouldn't put them on every one, but a lot of times they will put supports like that on these 3-inch lines. Okay, yep, somebody's testing the fall. I rarely see that be a problem. And then the plumbers are pretty good about getting a fall in there. And figuring out, of course, the beginning of the line is going to be the high spot. The end of the line coming out, the foundation form is going to be the low spot. And as they say, water runs downhill, right? Isn't that what they say?
Yes.
Water runs downhill. Okay. And there's something you always want to see in the city of Houston, a green tag. That's so good. And actually, this riser right here is a little too close to this form. So, gave him a green tag anyway. That's that the plumber had in there are all naturally filled in by the foundation work that's being done. And then we still got that high pipe right there. That's a good picture. I like that. And for some reason, they always like to put a big clod of dirt on top of the clean out. I haven't figured that one out yet. That's another class. And this is even farther along here, you know, getting the concrete. The foundation guy puts this mastic on all the pipes. And I've heard a couple of different reasons. One of them is to keep the concrete from binding to the PVC. And one that I came up with myself, really, I've heard it maybe another time, but you know, termites, they burrow under the house and come up into the house. One of the major areas is cracks in the slab. And when the concrete dries, it always pulls away from these pipes. So if you got gook in there, I've read that termites don't like gook. They are gook. About locations of pipes, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that you can't really tell. You know, you might see at the foundation stage these pipes going up in the air and think, oh yeah, these are vents that are going to go all the way through the roof. But they're tied into these others, and then you got one vent going up through the roof. So that's just a little pictorial to make my point. And this is what it looks like when the plumber first moves into the job. And a little thing I'll say here, there's been some electrical run, I don't know why. If it was a job that I was consulting on, I would absolutely not let them do something like that, because plumbers don't care about wires. They do not care about wires. And if you get a little nick in a wire from a plumber doing his work, and he may just mistakenly put a drill through there and hit the wire and not even know it. You're not going to find that out till they power up the house and you start getting some sparks and who knows what. So that's why I have this sequence. Always the plumber in, get him out, then the electrician in. You know, pipe, and this is PEX, and who can tell me why one is blue and one is red? There you go. I had to throw an easy one in there, but that's good. And sometimes they use all white pipe and just make sure they run the red to the white to the hot and white to the cold. Typically, you will see the red and blue like this, though. It's beautiful stuff. That's how this system works for the valve. And I don't quite know what that is.
So like a shower head or something?
Yeah, this will be the control valve. This will be maybe the faucet or another control valve of some kind. What they call a manifold system for the PEX. Did you have a manifold put in? No. It was real popular when it first came out, and now it's not that popular. Because it actually, the plumbers, there's quite a bit of work involved in hooking all these things up. You can see this white pipe right here. That's the incoming water. So 9 times out of 10, the incoming water to the whole house is white. Downstage. So here the plumber's coming in and he's completing these drains that were just stubbed out of the wall, coming up and connected to the sink. And then the water lines are inside this cabinet running up to that faucet. Now, of course, if this was a wall mounted, there wouldn't be any of this water piping. It would be coming out somewhere up here. That's one of those freestanding tubs. That's a clawfoot tub. Okay, those are enormously more complicated to put in than a freestanding pedestal tub. Because if you don't get it precise down here for the drain, you got some work to do. The vessel sink, that's real popular. That's a wall-mounted fixture, very popular, and adds a layer of complication that you gotta really pay attention to. That plumber I mentioned to that didn't have the valves sitting far enough out, not only did he not set it correctly, but he had all the information such that he could set it correctly. So I'm gonna have that guy knocked off sometime. Three stages, and really the first stage is just around the foundation, which is a stage because you gotta think about it up front, but it's not nearly as labor intensive as the rough in and the trim out. So in the slab part, you may have conduits, floor plugs, conduits for islands, and the temporary pole. So really of those, the most important are the conduits for the island and the temporary pole. I'm not a big proponent for floor plugs because you know how couches move around your house magically.
Especially in the concrete floor.
Yeah, so if you've got a floor plug, think, oh wow, I'm gonna put things right there. No. You probably are. You know, if you wanna put floor plugs in and just not be married to them being where they need to be, that's fine. It's a little difficult. You can see this conduit pipe right here is running and looping over to here. So you can guess a couple of things. This is the island and this is the exterior wall. I think that's a floor plug right there. It's a little difficult to see. And then there's the T-pole back there. And I will say that I've seen probably 95% of the foundations that I've seen go in, the T-pole wasn't hooked up. Might be planted, but it wasn't hooked up. Because then you gotta go through the gyrations and getting the meter on there. And these power companies are less than sharp, and it takes some time, some doing. But I've got, I think, another picture here. We're farther down the road, but these guys can work off generators very easily. Let's see. This is more running of electrical. I have a note on there that, you know, you want to walk the house with each one of these mechanical trades before they start. You know, the AC guy to talk about the design and the layout and dropping down from second floor to first floor, whatever else, the location of your units, the plumber, just to verify that yes, this sink is here, that kind of thing, in case anything comes up. Maybe you'll talk to the plumber about the location of the water heaters. You know, I want 2 tankless, I want one on one side of the house, one on the other, whatever it might be. And the electrician, you know, he'd be walking through the house putting these little magic marker notations here and there. And they all mean something to him. But if you're walking the house with him, you'll know what it means to you too. I mean, this little symbol right up here is just denoting that there is a wall fixture up there. So don't ever go through there and erase all their little markings, or there'll be that kind of rough in box is, yeah. It's for a ceiling fan. You need extra support for ceiling fans. So it can't just be nailed to the wood. It's gotta have a brace, either a two by something brace running flat across here, and this thing anchored to that, or a piece of hardware like that. And in this one, they do have a brace in the box attached to a brace. So those are the 2 different ways to do it. The second part of the electrical. You know, the house wiring is called hard wire. That's kind of the term for it. And this is low voltage wire.